The goal of this podcast is to help you break in and thrive in advertising. Today's guest, Evan Russack, co-founder and head of strategy and accounts at WorkInProgress Boulder, Colorado. You might know them best for their work on Domino's, but they're doing a ton of incredible work for so many other amazing brands. WorkInProgress has been named an Ad Age A-List Standout in 2022, twice recognized by Ad Age's Small Agency Awards, and shortlisted for Campaign US's Independent Agency of the Year in 2023. We talk about the business savvy that he picked up as he grew up, his journey through the world of beer, and building a new agency from scratch. Boulder has always been a special place for me, since that's where I found my path into advertising and marketing. And WorkInProgress is an incredible example of how the shops under the flat irons are no joke. I've been very excited to get back behind the mic and pumped to share this episode with you. So let's get into it. I'm your host, Cooper Colvig. Kick it, Mikey. All right, Evan, it's a pleasure to have you on. Thanks for joining me on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Honored to be on it.
So we always start off with my guest breaking and entering story. And throughout our episodes, we've noticed that there's a few trends, a couple paths that people go down to end up in the world of advertising and marketing. One of which is they find it in school or from someone they know and latch on to it and love it immediately. That's kind of the path I ended up on. Whereas yours falls down that second path of ending up in the marketing world through your own happenstances and scenarios. So how about we start there and learn about how you got into the industry and why?
Sure. Yeah. I think I was destined, but I didn't realize it. And the reason I say I was destined is because I grew up in a family business. My mother started a jewelry company in the 70s, which was abnormal at the time for a woman to be starting a business that she grew into quite a big company of over 120 employees, and sold her jewelry through Bloomingdale's and other major department stores, and then had her own freestanding stores. The reason I say all this is because I grew up having dinner every night with her, hearing about her issues with her business. So I, in essence, went to business school through elementary, middle school, and high school and college, which is pretty cool looking back on it. And her business was heavy marketing focused and manufacturing. She was making jewelry. So that led me to get into making beer. I love beer, oddly enough. I'm just kidding. That's not odd at all. I went to college in Wisconsin and probably consumed too much beer, but realized that it was something that I wanted to make. And at the time, craft breweries were just starting. Brew pubs were just starting when I was in college. And so I was exposed to that world, and graduated from college and went and got a job at a brewery and realized that that's where I wanted to be, and spent about 10 years doing different roles, and ended my brewing career being director of sales and marketing. So I developed sales programs, so did ride-alongs with distributors. And then I started developing advertising, out-of-home, billboards, radio. So I was buying media. I was working with DJs to do reads, and I was working with a freelance copywriter to write headlines. And I was sort of piecing together a team to make advertising. And I was leading that charge from a business and strategy and, communications objective standpoint. And that's what led to me getting a job at an ad agency. I was in Salt Lake City at the time, living in Park City, working in Salt Lake City. And there was a huge agency in Salt Lake that was owned by the Euro RCG network. And they were famous for doing the Intel Inside campaign embodiment. And it took me a little bit of time to convince the partner there to hire me, but that's how I got into the world of advertising.
That's awesome. There's a lot going on there. So you go from brewing to different jobs around the breweries and ending up in the marketing and in sales world. Did you have a mentor or people around you to help guide this sort of work? How did you end up finding success in that role?
So many. I think I've been fortunate to have had a lot of mentors in my career and in my life. And I think that's just my personality too. I sort of sought that out at the time. And so there was one person in the beer world that I got connected with. Actually, it was the first brewery I worked at, Breckenridge Brewery. He came from Coors as the brewmaster. He was a brewmaster at Coors, and he came over and he helped make Breckenridge Brewery in the inception. And I learned a lot from him, and I would pull a lot from him. And then the guy who started the first brewery actually in Utah, Greg Scherf, he would always give me guidance along the way, even when I wasn't working for him. So, I think people naturally want to help, and you just have to ask them, and maybe ask them at the right time, and then they'll offer guidance. The key is listening to what they're saying. We oftentimes don't want to hear what others have to say. We think we know all the answers, but there's a lot to be gleaned by what others have to share from their experiences and their perspectives.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that I love about this industry and any of the different roles that you're in, whether you're creative, account, or strategy. You have to have this curiosity to know more and to dig deeper, to end up finding some sort of success. But that goes wider to ourselves outside of our jobs and in general, and that's super cool, and totally agree with you. So what kind of pushed you to make the jump out of the brewing marketing world to then straight into an agency?
I think I realized that I was probably topping out in the beer world, and breweries they're all small businesses, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it's no dissimilar to our business today. Is that I think a good business has the founders are actively involved. In the brewery I was working in, the founders were actively involved. And I was very close to them, super tight, actually friends before I became an employee for them. So I could have, and I just think I do this anyways, I could have just real honest conversations with them. And there was an opportunity to invest more money in marketing and advertising to really grow the brewery. And then there was a need to perhaps incentivize me more. And I didn't see those things happening. And so I felt like I'd done about 10 years in that industry, and I was topping out, and my next move was to probably start a brewery. And that was really daunting to me. And I wasn't sure that I wanted to do that. So I had a friend who was working at this agency, DSW in Salt Lake, and he would always tell me about it, and it sounded really cool. And so it was through him that I got exposed to that. I didn't really know too much about the advertising world. And then once I went there and did an interview there, I was like, this seems really, really exciting, very different, a whole new world, a whole new set of skills to learn. And I like the notion of having a beginner's mindset and putting yourself in a situation to constantly be learning new things. So I think that's what sort of led to it.
Yeah. So how'd you get oriented within this world? You have a bunch of different players, lots of different roles, a ton of different directions to go in with that beginner's mindset. How did you make your way from Salt Lake City to Boulder?
Well, I think I've been really fortunate to have chosen good places to work at, and I've had good mentors and bosses, really, because I think that's what's enabled me to learn and excel in my career. There's a lot of people who have helped get me to where I am today. And I'm surrounded by 4 partners and, 50 other people in this building who help me every day. But, I spent a number of years working at DSW, and I went from an account manager to group account director. And I think it just was where I belonged because I excelled really quickly. And so it was clearly tapping into the innate skills from those, business dinners every night with my mother, talking about how to solve, whatever supply chain or marketing or, employee issue, whatever it is. I just think it was built in. And so it was just untapped at that point. And then I had my own agency after working at DSW in Park City because I became disenchanted, to be honest. And I was like, I want to figure out how to do something positive. And I also wanted to get more into design and brand identity and a little bit more strategy. And so I did that. And then the global recession was imminent, was hitting. I think it was 2009. And I'm like, this is not going to last. My biggest client was just purchased, and I could tell that was going to go away, and it was getting really tough, and project work was drying up. So I had told my wife, I was like, I started my own agency, I was like, I will only go to work. If it doesn't work out, that's totally fine. There's only 3 agencies I'd go to work for. And one of them was Crispin. One was Wieden and Kennedy, and the other was Goodby. And so I was on Twitter, and I saw that Alex had sent a tweet out looking for, certain types of people, account director. And I responded to his tweet, and then I got a message from him, and he's like, send me an email. And I spent, I was like, who knows where this is going to go? Make sure you write a good email. So I spent some time making sure I wrote a good email, and I got a response. And then I was on a call, and then I was out there, and I think I probably went out 3 times, and then the job opportunity dried up. And so this was all in the course of like starting, let's say in May, and it dried up in July. And, I needed the job, right? We were pregnant with our second child, and it was like, this is not, I need something. So in typical fashion for myself, I just hounded them and called and emailed, either called once a week or emailed once a week. I stayed in contact and kept asking. And then finally, in November, they're like, hey, there's a opening on Domino's account. The person who runs it wants to meet with you. Can you fly down to Miami? And I did. And I got offered the job. And so that was the end of 2009. We moved to Boulder in 2010.
That's incredible. So then you jumped on the Crispin train, kind of, I wouldn't say it like at the end, but you caught them at they were one of the biggest shops. You named the 3 biggest shops of the time of where you wanted to go to, and folks still reference the work that comes from Crispin to this day, and plenty of agencies, mine included. Did you find that you were able to re-enchant yourself and open and find those avenues within the branding and strategy world to progress and push yourself from there?
Without a doubt. Like I realized probably like 3 months in why I got hired and why I belong there, which was that environment was so suited to entrepreneurial thinking and self-starters, and people who could devise a plan and then go and assemble the right people to execute the plan. You still had to be, I think, humble and nice and approachable about the plan, but and inclusive. I think there's a lot of people who try to do that who don't have those traits, right? But it was amazing, and I knew that I needed to make the most out of it, and so I set some very clear goals of coming in of what I wanted to accomplish. And I mean, I got really lucky as well, because the people I got paired with were incredible. So I was paired with longtime Crispin people in Miami who taught me everything about Crispin and the ethos of Crispin. And I was paired with some young creatives who had been there 6 months before I arrived, who were insanely talented. And there was a core team emerging of people who were insanely talented at creative technology and at UX and at production. And we all came together. So, when I look back at it now, it was all by happenstance, but it was a pretty amazing team that was just assembled. So someone in the recruiting group was probably doing a good job, and the leaders of the departments were doing a good job in terms of who they hired. And so we had a really powerful team that was very fixated on using creativity to drive, business results, to drive business transformation. And that's what we got hooked on. And that's what I got hooked on, was how are we going to continue to deliver sales? That moniker for Domino's, the benchmark for Domino's was same store sales growth. So how are you going to do that quarter after quarter after quarter? And for that whole team, and that team today are my partners, right? So that's the other part that's crazy, is that the team that I got paired with, we became co-workers, and then we became friends, and now we're now we're business partners, and we're been doing it now together for 13 years, just in different places. So I got completely reconnected and reignited, and that place was amazing for us. Absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to get into the shop a couple of times for school projects while I was at Boulder, and I think a lot of the work that we got to see up on the walls there was, I think, still fruit of the loom, but the energy in that big space was it was different, and you could just tell the thinking was different, the energy was different, and it kind of gave me that taste of like, all right, so this is what it's supposed to look, feel like when you see the marketing advertising machine operating the way that it should, or at the highest level. And it was truly incredible. Now, the most important question about your time there, did you end up getting one of the desks and the plywood desks?
Plywood desks. I was in an office that was covered with plywood.
Yeah.
But your comment about the energy, I remember walking into there for my first interview, and I opened the door and walked in, and I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh my God, this is insane. Like, you could just, that place definitely was humming when you walked in there, and there was something about it, and it was so powerful. And so I hope that when people come into our office, that they feel a hum and an energy and a vibration off everybody who's in here, who's focused on, doing great work. I think we have it, but there's not, like, I don't know that. I mean, there's a lot of people in that building and a lot of smart people and passionate people. That energy was incredible.
Yeah. It's one that I don't think I'll forget, and am excited to, for myself, even recreate it and in any way that I can personally. And it's something that any folks who are listening that love this industry and care about this industry and love the work that they do, that there are places out there where like-minded, passionate people converge and create really incredible stuff. And you, in that sense, made something for yourself.
Yeah. And I think the other thing to remember too is, and this is really hard, and I mean, I have to do this constantly, remind myself this, but like, the reason why a place has such powerful energy is probably because of how people orient themselves against the work that needs to be done. So like, we can either think of the work as mundane, boring, not great. We can think of the brief as, I can't believe the brief is for email or, secondary channel or homepage or whatever it may be. And we can think about the feedback as, the feedback is just a bunch of complaints and it's negative. So we can orient ourselves that way, or we can orient ourselves into a much better positive mindset, which is, no, how am I going to create the best email program possible? How am I going to create the best social post possible? How am I going to take this brief that doesn't seem exciting on paper and make it something that's exciting? And I think that's the key to creating really powerful energy in a building. And then how do I take the feedback and hear and listen to the feedback and understand what the feedback is, so that then I can have a conversation about the feedback to really get to what the root of the problem might be. It's never just in that first sentence right? It's buried somewhere under layers. And it takes the ability to hear that and then to respond in a friendly manner, to allow a conversation to ensue and even a debate to ensue in a positive manner, to be like, but what is the real issue? And then once you can get to that real issue, that real problem, then you're like, there's a huge number of unlocks, because now you know what the problem is. So then you can go back and use strategic thinking or creativity to solve that problem. So I think it's all about how you orient yourself. And I have a feeling that there was a lot of people who were orienting in the right direction in that building. And that's what created all of that energy. And so that's what we're trying to do today. And every brief that we work on and every client engagement that we have is be that kind of partner.
Yeah, that's super interesting, and brings up a huge point that if you're the entry level person or someone who's just getting their feet wet within the industry or at your first job at an agency that, okay, you've got your brief for a social execution, or like you mentioned that email campaign, and it might feel like you don't have a lot of control over that energy or what you can really bring to the table because you're confined by the medium or the tactic or whatever it is that's been thrown across your desk, but that you actually have the greatest opportunity to make a real impact on, even if it is just the tactical level, that if you can do that from an execution below the line, that you will slowly begin to prove that you can do that all the way up to the strategic partnership level.
100%, without a doubt. So it's like, it's basically how do you look at every opportunity as an equal opportunity and not dismiss it because it's for, a lower level channel or something that's lower in the funnel or whatever it may be. There's opportunity abounds everywhere. And then that's how you prove like you're saying, how you prove your value to the agency you're working with. But that's really how an agency proves its value to the brand that it's partnered with, because that marketing team then looks at the agency in a different lens. And it's like, they're taking every assignment from us seriously. And they're looking at the assignment for not just what it is, but how to make it bigger than what it is. And then I think there's some sort of filter that has to be applied there, because sometimes you have to recognize, no, this is just what it needs to be. And don't try to overthink it, but within the confines of the ask, how do you bring something that's going to push a little bit higher than just if you just mailed it in, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. That no matter how small or scary or shitty the assignment might sound, that those are the ones that you should actually salivate over, because with any assignment, you have just huge potential to prove your worth and make a meaningful outcome for your team, your client, anyone that's around you. And that's something that always keeps my engine going as I go through the day to day. But it's pretty awesome.
And sometimes the way you handle that too is say, hey, here are 3 ways to solve what you asked for in the brief. And now here are 3 completely different ways that push the boundaries or that go beyond, the realm of what you had asked for. It might go beyond the realm of the budget and the whatever, if there's a media expenditure and a production budget, whatever it may be. And so if you do it that way, then that also benefits you massively too, because the brand team that you're working with will be like, oh, well, so they gave me what I'm asking for, but then they gave me 3 more things that are pushing beyond what I asked for. And that's a really respectful way to do it, because then you're not burning a bunch of time. So like they might see those 3 things that push the boundaries and go, great, let's do the one thing that addresses our brief, but that other idea that you have, now let's put that on a different track and let's allocate a different budget to that and let's go and make that. And that's a little bit of how to make that happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the out of the box, the huge, big idea thinking. And it's something that you're always looking for within your agencies. And it sounded like you, through your family, the way you grew up and how you moved through the beer industry and then into advertising and marketing, you were able to pick up the fundamentals along the way that are core to being able to even get to the big ideas. What were those for you? And how can folks think about ensuring that they have a really, really strong fundamental skill set as a strategist or an account person before even getting to that big, huge idea stage?
Yeah. I think it's understanding. It's a good question. It's a really big question too. So I'll try to understand. I think it's about really understanding why. And I said this earlier, but related to the feedback, like why. But when you're given a brief, oftentimes you don't know, it's not in there as to why we're doing this thing. So like, why are we launching this new product? What insight was that product born from? What role does that product play in the business? What problem is it trying to solve within the business? And then within that, there's a whole bunch of other layers, right? Because within that, there could be, there could be a consumer perception about the brand. And so this new product innovation is actually meant to address that negative consumer perception. But that's not written in the brief that way, So I do feel like an account person and a strategy person is a bit of a detective, because you're trying to uncover clues and then chase those clues down to see what's in there to then understand. Because maybe sometimes the people who are writing the brief are ashamed or are embarrassed or aren't being vulnerable enough to like just express the true situation, right? And so there's people who write great briefs without a doubt. And then there's sometimes a brief that isn't so great. And it's just a matter of asking the right questions, which I think is just being, a bit of a detective of like, well, where did this product feature come from? How was it created? Who was it created for? What is the research that led to it? What's the consumer insight? What's the consumer need? It's, what's, like I said, what's the barrier? What are all those things? And then this product feature, like, how is it integrated into the whole communications plan for the year? And is it the message really supposed to be about the feature, or is the feature just part of the message? And we really need to talk about something at a little bit of a higher level for the brand. So I would say that it's about some level and some degree of forensics that are wrapped around understanding the business and then understanding the brand and the marketplace's perception of that brand. So those are, that forms a triad where there's a lot of information to be gleaned that becomes relevant to the brief and whatever that brief might be about.
Yeah, absolutely. So ensuring that you've done a really deep diagnosis to totally understand why, to your point, to loop ourselves back, the 5 why framework at my agency, whenever, we start asking questions, that's always the first place to start. We dump everything that we have on the board, you 5 why it. And if we're really struggling in a brainstorm or in a problem solving session, it usually means we haven't answered the right questions or even asked the right questions at the beginning.
Yeah, totally. And then I think for us too, what it started to do was start to push the understanding of the overall challenge or goal to a little bit of a higher level so that you say, well, if this is our objective, then how are we going to achieve it? And you start to uncover areas that you can do ideation against to achieve that. And so then it gives purpose to a product feature. Like what's a great example for Domino's was this notion of how do we take advantage of online ordering? Because we knew at the time that a small percentage of orders was coming on from online, but we knew that online orders had a huge benefit to the business, from customer satisfaction to average ticket to everything. And so that revealed itself as a business opportunity, which then set up a roadmap of briefs and of new product innovations that are still happening today, that are trying to that have increased the percent of orders that are made online, but have demonstrated and proven and shown that Domino's isn't just a company that makes and delivers pizza. It's also a technology company. And then within that did so many things for the brand and the business, because it modernized the brand and the business. It made it appeal to a younger consumer. And then, it changed how the market, the investment market would view Domino's, and it started to change how they value Domino's, and it changed the valuation model perspective as it's a technology company, rightly so, because it has invested so much in technology. So I think when you start doing it that way, you start to understand you start to understand the role and the place of this one brief. And then it gives a framework for everything moving forward. So it really actually takes you from a short-term view to a long-term view. All of this is insanely hard to get an organization to do, by the way, because we're so driven by short-term results, and rightly so. Like, we have to be, right? We can't say it's coming. We have to be focused on the short term, but we need to have a plan for the long term. And those things have to be in service of one another. And so you have to look at both, and then you have to create that relationship between the two. And that's what started to happen for us. And that's what we do today with the brands that we work with.
Sort of in line with the work that Peterfield and Lesbinet are doing with the long and the short of it. You need to have your long-term brand building initiatives out driving for future growth, but also having your short-term tactics and strategies in place to make sure that you're harvesting what's going on right now. And if you can find a balance between those two, then you're off to the races.
I do know that I had a mentor at the first agency I worked at. He was one of the partners, Alan Rygard, who hired me. And he would always say, sales overnight, brand over time. And I think that's pretty good mantra to have.
Yeah, it's a really easy way to think about it. So back to when you're outlining the thought process and how you guys got to revolutionizing the way Domino's did its online ordering. I can't imagine that the client brief or ask was, hey, come and revolutionize this for us, right? How did you come from whatever the ask was in the client brief to something that's so profound on the other end? And then to your point, make it happen, because that's the hardest part, is one, getting the client to sign off on it, and then it's execution from there.
Yeah. Well, it was part of everything else that was going on. It wasn't the sole thing that was being done, meaning, there was other product innovations taking place and other national promotional windows that were needing to be done, and briefs tied to those. What happened was that we started to see the opportunity in the digital space, and so did they. And then, of course, they saw it, right? They innovated delivery. They innovated, they created online ordering. They knew what was coming, and they were investing in that. And then what we did was start to show them the power of what digital could enable in terms of a promotional window, and an advertising campaign, and how it could drive earned media, and how it could create a conversation around the business, and how it could change the conversation around the business, like we're talking about, and make the brand feel more modern and make it appear in different places. So that's what really started to happen was, if we start to do this, look at what it can unlock. And then it became a joint effort between the team and them, setting a goal, and they embraced it, and they set a goal, and they set a goal they wanted to achieve with online orders, which then allowed their organization to rally around it. So then everybody, it's just, I think it's classic business, business strategy, which is, what's our goal? What are we trying to achieve? And then if we have this goal, everybody's working towards it. And so I make it sound so easy. I don't think it was overly hard. I think we're really fortunate. We're really lucky. We had a killer team. They're an incredible partner, and it was the right opportunity to invest in digital, and it paid off. The way that we made it happen and the way that we sustained it was just by understanding what the limitations were and what the challenges were, and having a test and learn mindset, and being patient, and trying something on a smaller scale, and proving to each other what the return on the investment could be, and then understanding the technology limitations, and then working within that framework, and then creating roadmaps for new infrastructure so that additional things could be done. So it was always the balance of, are we doing enough to service the immediate need, which is driving sales, but are we also creating a pipeline of work together that can unlock new innovations that we can then bring to market? And it's creating that roadmap, and it's being respectful to a business's side, because a business has a lot of things going on. An agency is just focused on one small piece of what a business is doing. So you have to be super respectful of that business machine and everything they have going on, and figure out how to navigate and how to support, and then how to wait. Right. And then it just became this machine, and everybody started to get hooked on the results of it and the power that it had. And then it just kept going. So, I mean, it was sort of, it became self-fulfilling, I guess, in a way, if you will.
Yeah, it's super exciting and fun to talk about the scenario that had so much success, like your time on Domino's. Would you say that campaign, that client, had the largest effect in the trajectory to where you are now? Or was there a team scenario, other client that had the most profound experience on you and pushed you and your partners to end up opening your own shop?
I would say that there's 5 partners. Matt, who leads creative; Al, he leads the Domino's account today, and he was leading it at Domino's. I mean, at Crispin. Sorry. When we departed. And Harold, who leads technology, is another partner, and he leads technology at the agency. And Stafford, who was leading production on it at Crispin and leads production at the agency. We were all impacted by it, like, without a doubt. And it's what brought us all together. It's actually what allowed us to formulate our action-based approach. And it's what gave us the desire to say, can we apply this to different categories? And I mean, the fact that we got to work at Crispin and on Domino's, and we got to do what we did on Domino's, is, I don't know that you get that often in your career. And the fact that we're doing it again is very unheard of. You rarely get a second chance. You rarely get to work on the same brand a second time at a different agency. It's pretty incredible. And so, yeah, that's what propelled us. And to have them back and to be working with them again within Work in Progress is amazing. And they're still an incredible partner, and they still push us forward and push us on our thinking and our approach. That approach that we have, this action-based approach, has proven to work in a bunch of different categories. So we've applied it to financial, we've applied it to CPG, whether it be, food, coffee, confectionery. We've applied it to CPG in terms of alcohol. We're about to apply it to the TV subscription, service provider, OTT, over the top. And so, yeah, I mean, without Crispin and Domino's, there wouldn't be Work in Progress.
Yeah, it's awesome. And I know you guys are doing great work too. Pretty sure, I know you guys have at least one FE this year, which is pretty exciting.
The FE is a big deal in the sense of, like, they're all, awards are great, and because it's being acknowledged by your peers in the ad community, and the work's getting recognized, and we all like recognition, and so it makes you feel good, but it also is an acknowledgement of that work being impactful. And in the case of the FEs, it's an acknowledgement of the work being effective. And that's an important measurement for us, because it's connected. Like, the advertising has to drive sales. That's how we look at it. So to win an FE for a campaign that the team at Work in Progress did, called Carry Out Tips, which was tipping you to be the carryout driver, to be the driver of bringing the pizza home. That was a very successful campaign, and to have it recognized by winning an FE is is a good acknowledgement of the work and of the effort the team made on both sides too, because that wasn't an easy thing for Domino's to implement, right? So it just shows the power of creativity as it relates to driving business results, which is a big focus for us.
Yeah, and I know effectiveness is the term that is getting hotter and hotter and hotter with each year, and as I think even more folks on the client side are bringing that mindset. It's a great way for the clients and agencies to meet over a unified goal, rather than crossing this kind of dark chasm of like, I'm the client and I need something and I'm not totally sure, but I know you guys are creative and you guys want your creative awards too, to where the two come together and synchronize that effort. And it's epic to see you guys doing that with Domino's. And I know a large part of that is the approach to the work at Work in Progress, where you're taking an action-based approach. Can you walk me through what that looks like?
Doing a brand action is to stand out from the competition, cut through the competition. You're clearly in a commoditized category. You're trying to differentiate yourself. So what's something that you can do that's intrinsic to your brand? That's a demonstration of what you passionately believe in, right? It shows how obsessed you are. So that action you take will allow you to stand out from your competition, because it's something that they're not doing or couldn't do. And then by virtue of that, it does create a valuable conversation around the brand that's strategically in line, because it's a representation of what the brand stands for. And then it should be able to become advertising that paid media can be put against. So that's how we look at an action. And that's how, when we're looking at other work, that's kind of the lens in which we're viewing it as, is that thing that the brand's doing, is that tied to what the brand stands for? Is that unique enough to create a conversation? Is that conversation going to lead to compelling advertising? Is that advertising going to be memorable enough to drive sales? That's sort of how we look at it.
Yeah. So is the term action for you and Work in Progress, the line that you draw between disrupting within a category for the sake of disrupting and being flashy, and actually driving effectiveness and a business result on the other end?
The line is differentiation. How can we take an action to differentiate ourselves from the competition? So we're seeking memorable differentiation. So emoji ordering for Domino's is memorable differentiation. Pinpoint delivery, which was just launched, deliver a pizza to wherever you are, is memorable differentiation. So that's and it makes sense because we're the delivery experts. So we're the innovators of delivery. So if we innovated delivery pizza via car, then shouldn't we be the ones that, innovate, will deliver pizza to wherever you are? So that action then is in line with what the brand stands for, and then can lead to memorable creative, because, we have people flying out of the sky with a pizza, and flames extinguishing off their feet as they land, because they're like little mini rocket ships, descending upon the consumer who's ordered the pizza. So I think it leads to creative that then is memorable. So, and the action is what led that. And then it can create a conversation around it because it's something that no one else is doing. So that's how we would look at it.
So you have like three kind of core boxes that you're checking. You're aligned to the brand's purpose, why it's there, in line with a business goal, but then reaching your long-term brand memory, making sure that you're mentally available with your consumers, and then bringing it to life within tactics and medias that can see results in the short term.
Yeah. And like you just said two words that reminded me of someone who I think you've had on your program before, which is Byron Sharp, who wrote the book, How Brands Grow. And, the research that his team did around media is really, really powerful. And so the notion for us is that we do believe that an action can lead to more memorable creative. And when you start picking up on what they write about in the book, that more memorable creative needs to run with less frequency. So you can reach more people with less frequency because the creative is more memorable. And then to you use the words mental availability, which they talk about, is we only have so much mental availability. So how do we occupy that limited space in a consumer's brain? So when they think of the category, they think of our brand, so if they think of pizza, they think of Domino's. If they think of coffee, they think of Nescafe. If they think of malt beverage, they think of Mike's Hard Lemonade. It's like through that recall, through the action you take for that brand. So that's how we look at it.
Yeah, absolutely. So then if we're using the second half of that, where you have your physical availability, that's how it comes to life in the short term. Are you showing up in ways that are meaningful and align with the market?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Yeah. In fact, we did something for Mike's Hard Lemonade where, remember the cat lawyer? Right?
Oh yeah.
And Mike's Hard Lemonade in its inception had the tagline, "A hard day calls for a hard lemonade." And so we tapped into that, and we tapped into that cultural moment with the Rod was his name. And we reached out to him, got in touch with him, sent him some, he went and got some mics, and we recorded him, and we made we recreated that whole scenario with the judge and everything, and with the cat filter. And then it resolved to, him removing it and then being able to get a sip of, well, you can't show him drinking, but it was, it got to pay off. A hard day calls for hard lemonade. So you can absolutely do that. And you have to be very attuned to what's happening in culture and figure out ways to tap into that for sure.
And then act fast on it, because the way the market has changed, even just the last 5 years, you have to be lightning fast to jump on something like that.
Yeah. And I also think it's harder today than ever, even if you jump lightning fast for it to get a lot of press. I just think we're in a different era now where that stuff it's not viewed as unique as much anymore. You have to be really tapping into something pretty big. And then there has to be not a lot of noise happening for the press to write about it. And it just seems like that 24-hour news cycle. And we have been inundated with so much news lately that it's just even harder to break through.
So we've talked a lot about the process within Work in Progress, your time at Crispin. What's on the horizon? What are you guys looking at right now? How are you innovating, and what's big in the future for Work in Progress and you?
Yeah. Well, we just turned 7, which is a big deal. Thinking back to 2016 when we started, it's crazy that it's been 7 years, and it's crazy to think that, we're the size that we are, and that, we have Domino's, and we just won Sling TV, which is another healthy size brand, and a similar brand in the sense that it has a digital platform. It has a digital product, like Domino's has a digital platform, which is really great for us because it's how we think. And then, they invest in paid media, which is great for the action-based approach. And so there's a lot of, there's not just a lot of similarities, but there's also a desire on their side to really push the boundaries of the business and the brand. So it feels like a similar situation we were in with Domino's, and we are in with Domino's today. So it makes us really excited. We always talk about how we don't want to become a gigantic agency. We love being independent. We're self-funded. We each of the partners put, $3,000 in to start the agency, which is mind-boggling to think that that's how it started. And so we get to make the decisions that we think are right for the agency and for where we want to take the agency. And so, we are very discerning about what business we bring into the building. We don't want to bring in business that's not right for what we want, not right for our approach and our philosophy, not right for the team that we have. So we're super discerning that way. So I would say we will continue in that path. and continue to have controlled growth and make sure that as we win a new piece of business, that we establish it within the agency, that we establish a good workflow, we establish a good team around it, we establish a good process, and that we're creating that short-term and long-term roadmap, that pipeline of work that we were talking about, and have that pipeline so we all know what we're doing, right? We do the same thing with Domino's today, even though they've been in the building for 3 years, coming out in 3 years. We're still working in the same manner, which is what does the year look like? And we're planning that in advance, and we're mapping that against business objectives, and then we're mapping that against brand objectives, and we're matching that against consumer perceptions. We'll do the same thing now with Slang, and we'll continue to seek opportunities that are both AOR and project based, but in a very controlled manner. And then tied to an opportunity where we can really apply our action-based approach, because that's why we started the agency. That's the kind of work that we want to do. And when you deviate from what your DNA is, that's when you get in trouble. And so we're very mindful of that.
Yeah, it's incredible. 7's a big number, a lucky number for Colorado too. It's John Elway's number for those who aren't Broncos fans, but it's incredible to know that you guys have a really epic group of people doing meaningful work in ways that are effective for your clients out of Colorado today. And it's been an absolute blast to have you on the show, Evan, and I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah. Thanks so much. It's been really great to talk to you and share the agency. The other thing I'll just say too is that we want to make sure that we continue to grow and foster a culture that's super inclusive, and a culture that allows people to be who they are and do the work that they want to do, and have a balance in their life between work and personal time. And that's really, really important to us. And we protect that massively. And that's led us to have a very high retention rate. And so it's another thing that we spend a lot of time on to make sure that it exists in the building.
Yeah, it's incredible to hear that too from you, because it's easy to think that and feel that way in concept and in theory, and and less great places lose track of that for whatever different reasons and ways that the corporate world can do that. But I think everyone knows that the people are going to perform their best when they're happiest, to be them true selves, to bring their unique and diverse backgrounds in places that are safe and going to uplift that for them. So it's great to hear that and know that there's another place like that in beautiful Boulder.
Yeah, totally. This has been great. So thanks for allowing me to share story of work in progress and some of my career. Appreciate it.
Oh, it's been an absolute blast, man. Thanks.